Hello and welcome to the home of the Ghost Owl, and here we are continuing our series of looking at Total Warhammer 3 factions, races, in terms of the possible lords and heroes that could be added to the faction. Recently had the release of the roadmap, which shows numerous factions getting additional legendary lords. We've seen legendary heroes being added to the game more recently as well, with Gorda's Backstabber, Ulrika, and so on. And so we're having a look at what those possibilities are. Now, there are obviously hundreds of characters in the lore. We're not going to touch on a fraction of them. What I'm focused on is the most well-known, and in particular, if they were present in an army book, they had rules, they had a miniature, or and on that last army book as well. So most of the races had an 8th edition army book, some didn't, and those that didn't, we look at the last army book they had. So that's where the main focus is, and I think that it seems to be, if you look at Creative Assembly's choice of lords and so on and so far, seems to be where a lot of the inspiration is taken from, where the faction of Vampire Coast doesn't allow for it, but the others certainly does. So now we're going to look at the Dark Elves. Dark Elves are currently in an interesting position in the game. A lot of people didn't like the slave mechanics in Total Warhammer 3. They were very popular in Total Warhammer 2, but not as popular in Total Warhammer 3. There's definitely some steps taken to address that, the way the slave mechanics works in the recent patch. I've yet to test that out. Dark Elves are one of my favourite factions. It was the second army I ever collected on the tabletop, and I've been playing since 1992. I do love the Dark Elves. I've loved reading the Malice Darkblade books, and they are definitely a favoured faction of mine. I do think Crone Hellebron needs a little bit of a rework at the moment. She just doesn't feel great, and I think that's, as one of the least played characters, no surprise. But now, if we look at the Dark Elves themselves, they got 6 legendary lords. That puts them, pretty much right up there with factions that have some of the most legendary lords. There's a few others like Skaven, Lizardmen, and so on. But these tend to be the core factions of Total Warhammer 2 that have this many legendary lords. And if you look at them, Malekith, Morathi, Hellebron, and Malice Darkblade, they were all in the 8th edition army book. Felheart was in the army book as well, but he was in as a legend, as a hero. And Rakarth, he wasn't in the book, but he has had a model and been in the book in the past. So, if I'm looking at possible other lords that I want to add to the game, I don't really think there is any. I think we've captured the main players in the latter part of Warhammer Fantasy Battle that you'd want to consider in terms of narrative story in the old world. They already have 6. They certainly, I don't think, need any more. So I haven't added any possible lords in for the Dark Elves. I'm not sure they need it. Though if we look at other factions, and even in the Dark Elves with Loki Felheart, there's no reason why one of those heroes that are listed below couldn't also make their way to be a legendary lord. We've seen that happen in other cases. But let's have a look at those heroes. So they don't have any current legendary heroes. It seems like most factions, or every faction, is going to get at least one legendary hero. So let's look and see what we've got. Well, Shadowblade, probably the most well-known and one of the most called for. Shadowblade is a K-Knight assassin. He, in fact, is the chief K-Knight assassin of Crone Hellebron. The most famous assassin in all of Dark Elf Warhammer Fantasy Battle. He's still relatively young, at being less than 2 centuries old. But he's a legend. He's a legend. His most famous exploit was the slaughter of an entire crew of a high elf hawk ship at sea. So that's quite interesting. He's a great character. He'd be a great fighter on the battlefield. There are K-Knight assassins as heroes already, and he'd add an interesting, different dynamic. I'd be interested. A lot of the legendary heroes we've seen so far, they kind of boost a particular set of units from the faction. Shadowblade's not really going to do that. Is he going to boost other assassins? How many assassins you have in your army? It doesn't really work that way. It's not kind of how he operates. So he's an interesting one. He's kind of that sort of lone operative type. So, I mean, he's in the book, and he would be a good choice. There's no doubt he'd be a good choice and a different choice for the heroes. And he's definitely down as one of the ones I would absolutely love to see in the game. However, my favourite of the heroes has always been the next one, Koran Darkhand. Koran Darkhand, captain of the Blackguard of Nagaroth. He's the longest serving member of the Blackguard. And he's been fighting next to Malekith for nearly 1,000 years. And so he would be such a fantastic, I think, addition to the game. He would boost Blackguard. You could see him having some really interesting elements as either part of a Malekith army, but certainly around an army with Blackguard in. I think the interesting thing with him as well is he studies not only the halberd, but is also but also the sword. And so he's considered one of the finest weapon masters in Nagaroth. So he should be, he's like a Blackguard, but also that's, a super high damage output at the same time. So Koran Darkhand, certainly my favourite on this list, but the three that are highlighted there in green would definitely be excellent choices that I would love to see in the game if we were able to have all of them. The next one in there is not that much different, and Koran Darkhand, he boosted Blackguard, he was a captain of the Blackguard. Talaris Dreadbringer is kind of the flip side to that. At Harganeth, he's the chosen of Cain, he's the captain of the Harganeth Executioners. So that Talaris is going to work well with Crone Hellebron. He bases himself out of Harganeth, as you'd expect, but he's known as an absolute beast in combat, ultra high damage. He is the best of the executioners. He's got a really interesting armor set as well. As he has this blood encrusted armor, so he's pretty much almost drenched in gore all the time. So you could really make him stand out to be quite different. Koran, you're going to potentially show him with a sword or a sword and a halberd or something like that, which could make him look different. I think you've got these legendary heroes. You don't want them to just merge into something else. But Talaris Dreadbringer, again, he was in the book. He was an 8th edition hero, boosting the Harganeth Executioners, and there's no reason he couldn't be in the game doing the same. So the Dark Elves, well, I don't think there's many potential Lord choices, and I'm really not sure I see Koran Darkhand or Talaris as Lords. Koran really fits underneath Malekith. Talaris really fits underneath Malekith. They are captains of the army as opposed to being lords of the army in that way. Shadowblade is kind of a loner. He doesn't lead armies in the same way. But who else have we got in here? Just for completeness, we also have Urian Poisonblade. He's very well known. He's the Witch King's personal champion. It's rumoured he was bred for battle by the Witch King himself. Hence why he's his personal champion. So you'd kind of imagine him thinking the game where you've got the sort of dark elf hero that is again in the Witch King's army. I think the only thing with that is that with Urian Poisonblade is that would you see him as much in a different army? Koran Darkhand, he might work with Malekith, but he's still the leader of the Blackguard, and Blackguard can be in any of the Lord's armies. Urian Poisonblade's more like Malekith's personal bodyguard, so you wouldn't expect to see him in a Malus Darkblade army, for example, or a Lokir Felhart army. So there's that one there. And you've got Kelthray as well. He's also known as a very highly skilled member of the Cult of Executioners. But then why would you choose him over Talaris Dreadbringer? Again, putting it in there for completeness. But if I was going to pick someone to sort of boost Executioners and Harganeth, it would definitely be Talaris Dreadbringer. So I think we're pretty clear here in terms of what I would pick on it. They also had They had rules. They were in the 8th edition book. Shadowblade even had a model. So yeah, Talaris, Dreadbrain, Core, and Darkhand also, I believe, had models, if I remember correctly. I can't remember if I converted it or they were actually had official models. I think they pretty much had official models at some point. So yeah, that's definitely who I would pick for Dark Elves. If you like the video, give it a thumbs up. If you didn't like it, then give it a thumbs down. Let me know why in the comments down below. And if you disagree with what I've put on here, then don't give me a thumbs down, but put some comments down below and let me know who you think could be part of the list. If you think there should be another Legendary Lord, or if some of those heroes should make Legendary Lords and why, or if there's other heroes that you'd like to see in the game as well. And if you want to see more of these videos, then please hit that subscribe button. It's free for you to do, and it means a lot for me. So I thank you for that in advance. You've been watching The Ghost Owl, and I'll see you all very soon.